All right, let's get into this right here. Let's get into this right here. Not what I was looking for, but I found it. And it looked interesting. And I always love these medieval, like what you call these, I forget the word, but just seeing the way they depicted things. That nigga got an axe right there. I don't know what the fuck that is. This is a sword. Well, it's not a spear. It's almost like a damn mallet. He about to slam down on somebody's head. Like he just got his neck cut open. So, hmm, and we see the flags they carrying. That's another thing. Paying attention to the flags that these people are carrying. What is this flag right here? It got the dragon, then it got like look like parts of a castle, whatever you call that. So let's read about this. This look interesting. Yeah, this picture right here is tough. Hold on. You gotta save that. That's tough. We about to learn about these Portuguese people. I do consider myself an extent Portuguese because if I didn't, then I would be ignoring my grandmother and where her roots are from. So if we remove race, because I think a lot of times people identify with certain sides of their family that they're more racially aligned with, identity wise. But me, I kind of tend to acknowledge all parts really in four. Like from my research, from my research and what the evidence tells me, I would guess, and based off of my memory, my mother's side is gonna bring the Portuguese uh, ancestry and Senegalese ancestry. That's what the evidence says. And then on the other side, I've seen some traces, very, very small traces, like almost non existent, but I still, it still counts because it's still a part of the overall. So I gotta look into like two sides, well, two, two streamlines. I gotta look into two streamlines and really figure out what's going on in that streamline. And I could go further into that, but that's not why we're here. Let's look at the Battaglia de Aljubarota, Aljubarota, Battaglia de Aljubarota. Now, personally, I don't know if it's just the Brazilian ones, but I really don't like how the language sounds. It really gets on my nerves. I know that's rude to say, but I had someone say to me not too long ago that they don't like the way, like African people talk. And, I didn't take that no type of personally. I just try to understand where she was coming from. You know what I'm saying? So, me personally, I don't like to hear how they speak. It don't sound good to me. It, it don't sound intelligent. and that's just my cultural bias, right? Um, but on the contrary, on the contrast, I kind of like the way Cape Verdeans speak. Tututuju, tututuju, ipeta, sisoju, ejeta. Is how they speak. I don't really mind it, but when I hear the Brazilians, maybe I got something against Brazilians. You know what? I do have something against Brazilians. I'm not even gonna lie. I got something against Brazilians, man. I do. I keep it real. I got something against Brazilians. All right, anyway. So what's this battle? So diagram of the progress of the battle. Okay, I don't care about that right now. Not right now. The Battaglia Monastery. Okay, this is important to look at. I never thought I would be going into European history like this, but when I think back, I took a European history class, not because like, oh, I think Europe is cool, and to be honest, their history is not that interesting to me, to be real. Um, it's just not. But the Portuguese history is the only one that stands out to me. Everyone else, through all points in time of history, to me, Europe is boring. So most people, if you watch my videos, I don't really do a lot of Europe, but I do more Europe than everyone else because I know it's a part of the bigger picture. um, but Portugal is responsible for nations that I come across, people from those places, people from Cape Verde, people from Brazil. We have them both here in Massachusetts. In certain pockets, you will find Brazilians and Cape Verdeans here. So, so that's the monastery. It says the Battle of Aljubarrota was fought between the Kingdom of Portugal and the Crown of Castile on 14th of August, 1385. Crown of Castile was a medieval polity in the Iberian Peninsula that formed in 1230 as a result of the third and definitive union of the crowns. Then, some decades later, the parliaments of the kingdoms of Castile and Leon, upon the accession of the then Castilian King Ferdinand III. All right, I'm not going down that rabbit hole because my mind gonna get lost in that. But it said they were a polity. Okay, so they're fighting another polity. Forces commanded by King John of Portugal and his constable Nuno Alvarez Pereira, with the support of English allies, opposed the army of King John of Castile with its Aragonese and French allies. Okay, as well as Genoese mercenaries. Got them surrounded. But the advantage that Portugal got, bro, they're on the coast and they don't really got to worry about nobody on the other side coming to attack their coast, especially at this time. Because who else is seafaring from the west? The Native Americans not doing it. They not in Greenland and exploring coming over this way. At least history doesn't say they were doing that. So Portugal had this advantage, this geographical advantage, where you only got the people you worried about, you could put your back to the ocean. See, now what happens with the West Africans, they don't got that advantage anymore. This is when these kingdoms start to collapse. So now you got nations that could creep down your coast and attack you. Hold on, man. I'm about to start cooking. We're gonna get it cooking.
I'm telling y'all, please leave me the fuck alone.
Oh shit.
Straight up. Y'all ain't got
that.
no skin in the game. We ain't got nothing that we can talk to you about.
So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna change the entire way we look at history. I see people are studying history, and that's good. But I'm about to change the way we look at it. So what I brought to the game, and people don't gotta say they got it from me or was inspired by me. I don't care about views. I don't even like to talk to people. But if you come across me and I'm talking about something, you're gonna be in a fight. You are gonna be in a fight. Why? Because chances are I'm not gonna talk about it unless I read about it. And then you're gonna have to argue with the source. Well, you're gonna have to argue with the nigga I got it from. Because we could all just say, oh, we don't know if any of this happened. We could all do that bullshit. But when we talk in history, history is about the record. History, capital H, is about the record. Lowercase h, you can argue that history are the actual things that truly took place. But then you still have to say from whose perspective. Portuguese independence was safeguarded. In a new dynasty, the House of Aviz was established. Scattered border confrontations with Castilian troops would persist until the death of John I of Castile in 1390. But they posed no real threat to the new dynasty. So then it gives us the prelude. You know what? I'm going to get a video. I'm going to get a video on this. And I'm going to read in between the video. So we're going to put in this battle. Oh, we got medieval lo-fi radio. Hold on. Let me listen to this real quick. Let's see. We got like a little trap vibe to it. All right, 1385. We're going to go to this battle. 1385. Here we go. History March got a video. It's 31 minutes, though. That's too much. It's too much. A 10-minute video. Here we go. Can't hear it. Hold on. Y'all can't hear it. Man, I really love this time frame in history, like the 1300s. Man, I'm seeing there's a rich history in the 1300s, and a lot of activity is going on right before we get the major event. And we know that the major event is the whole quote unquote discovery of America. All right, let's see. Let me close this tab. Get this up.
His neighbor with an army more than 30,000 men strong. Portuguese rebel. It's August of the year 1385. Willing to enforce his claim to the Portuguese crown, the King of Castile once again invades his neighbor with an army more than 30,000 men strong. Portuguese rebels, united under John of Aviz, gathered the troops to repel the invaders and preserve their freedom. The opposing forces met on the hilly terrain near the town of Aljubarrota in a decisive battle for Portuguese independence. It is October of the year 1383. King Ferdinand of Portugal dies, leaving no male heir, and dark clouds gather over Portuguese sovereignty. Yet some months prior to his death, he arranged the marriage of his sole daughter, underage Beatrice, to Juan, king of neighboring Castile.
Mm.
Serious turmoil arose among the majority of the Portuguese noble class, as the deceased king's actions would essentially pass Portugal into Castilian hands.
Yep.
As soon as it became clear
Yeah, that
that
wasn't a
Juan
good
of
move.
Castile was
That
going
wasn't a good move. Whenever you give your daughter to the prince or the king, bro, you just gave you gave the princess, the only heir, because you didn't have a boy. You wedded her to a neighboring kingdom, another king. Yeah, you trying to screw your kingdom over by doing that.
class, as the deceased king's actions would essentially pass Portugal into Castilian hands. As soon as it became clear that Juan of Castile was going to enforce his claim to the Portuguese throne by right of his wife, the upper class of Lisbon realized the urgent need of an organized opposition. There were two suitable candidates, at least partially fitting the requirements to claim the throne, two illegitimate half-brothers of the deceased king. Both were named John, but we'll focus on the more viable claimant. John, the Grand Master of
See, this
Avila.
is an interesting topic, right? We are always led by a kingdom. Every nation, village, community has a leader. How should the transfer of power happen within leadership? And should leadership be hereditary? So let me read this for some context. It says the prelude to this war. The end of the 14th century in Europe was a time of revolution and crisis, with the Hundred Years' War between the English and the French for Western France, the Black Death devastating the continent, and famine afflicting the poor. So you got a war between the English and the French. Um, that's that has to be a naval battle. Let me see. English French War, 1300s. Naval battles. Let's see. Okay, there were some naval campaigns from 1338 to 1339. Also in 1340, the Battle of Sluys, and the Battle of Les Espagnols sur Mer, also known as the Battle of Winchelsea in 1350. So you're having naval battles to the north. You got the Black Death. Where's the Black Death? Black Death. They're saying it's all through Europe. The Black Death was a devastating pandemic of bubonic plague that swept through Europe and Asia in the middle 1300s, causing widespread death and societal disruption. Estimated that 25 to 30 million people died in Europe alone, representing a significant portion of the population. The plague is believed to have originated in Asia and spread along trade routes, eventually reaching Europe via Sicilian ports. Okay. The Black Death. Okay, what was the years? Mid 1300s. The mid 1300s. The plague spread along trade routes with ships carrying infected rats and fleas playing a significant role in its transmission. The disease reached Europe in the late 1340s, with Italy being one of the first areas to be affected. Okay. So this is the backdrop to this war right here. I'm not saying it's the cause, but this is what's been going on in Europe at the time.
There were two suitable candidates, at least partially fitting the requirements to claim the throne, two illegitimate half-brothers of the deceased king. Both were named John, but we'll focus on the more viable claimant.
Jen, what kind of question is this? But how could you know for a fact one person is from one landmass? Jen, where were you born? How do you know where you were born? How do you know where you were born? I feel like sometimes we be trying to be too deep with these questions that we don't ask good questions. There is a such thing as a bad question. And then a bad question, it makes you lose track, it makes you lose focus. And then you got to spend too much time wondering why was this terrible question asked. So Jen, how do you know where you're from? That's the same way we know where other people are from. Like, come on.
John, the Grand Master of Aviz, a popular figure among the people of Portugal, was good material for a king in the eyes of the aristocracy. He took charge and began efforts to gain the necessary recognition. To be precise, all three characters were named John in English, but to distinguish each one, we'll use the Spanish name for the King of Castile and keep its English counterpart for the Master of Aviz, though his Portuguese name was João.
Spectrum Mobile helps us stay connected because when I'm on the road, we can't go to bed without seeing each other's face. So that video chat powered by Spectrum Mobile keeps us connected. And
Wow.
So,
The way
let's
the way you're breaking this down right here. Juon. Juon. In English, we might say Jao, John, Juan, all the same thing. All the same thing. And you know, I'm gonna say it like this. I gotta get the right identifier for who these people are. But there's a people, well, they're the English. These people, and I guess that goes back to the Anglos. These people have put their smack down on the entire world. Put the smack down on the entire world. There's channels on YouTube that try to say it's the Jews. It's not the Jews. It's the Anglos. The Anglos put the Jews in Israel. Come on, man. Let's be serious. And you could just look at names and language. Money. Who's money? Like, this is going to tell you who's in control. People named Juan, people named Joao get discriminated against. But if your name is John, then you good. But they all European. But that lets you know there's a certain European that asserts their dominance through culture, through dominant culture.
back to the story. John's first step to gain recognition was to organize the assassination of the Dowager Queen's lover, Count of Endeiro, a detested figure in Portugal. Queen Leonor was quite literally a bad woman, being a suspect for adultery and treason. She was even accused of poisoning her husband by some people, and eventually given the telling nickname Leonor the Treacherous. Anyway, the lover was killed.
See, some people would say that's female nature, you know, way back. You know what I'm saying?
Even accused of poisoning her husband by some people, and eventually given the telling nickname Leonor the Treacherous. Anyway, the lover was killed, and John gained wide support across Portugal, along with the title of Protector of the Realm. This was now an open, full-scale rebellion. Though the winter passed by with no major events, the armed reaction of the King of Castile seemed inevitable. And indeed, the Castilian punitive expedition entered Portuguese territory in the spring of 1384. The man in charge of the Alentejo perimeter was a young but skilled commander, Nuno Alvarez Pereira. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, he managed to inflict heavy damage to the invaders near Atoleiros and force them to retreat. He was soon recognized by John of Aviz and awarded the title Constable of Portugal, becoming John's second in command. Yet the Spaniards didn't give up, and 1 month later, a bigger and stronger army led by the king himself crossed the border and marched straight to the capital. It was a smart move for Juan, as Lisbon was crucial to the rebels, not only because it was a capital, but also as an important economic center. The siege was laid in May, and all the Portuguese could do was to interrupt the invaders' supply lines and harass separate groups utilizing guerrilla warfare. 2 months had passed, and Lisbon was about to collapse due to famine and the bubonic plague, which still spread periodically across Europe. Portuguese rebels strived to maintain the capital at all cost and launched a desperate naval attack from the sea. Despite the loss of some ships, they managed to temporarily break the siege and resupply the city, relieving its defenders. Juan of Castile had his own problems too. An outbreak of the bubonic plague, supply shortages, and constant harassment by the rebels forced him to lift the siege in the beginning of September. The threat was temporarily halted, yet John was aware that the Castilian king had not given up his plans. Knowing that France was traditionally an ally of Castile, he sought the opportunity to ally himself with the English. The 100 Years' War between England and France was at its peak, yet the Portuguese managed to appoint several hundred English veteran longbowmen to reinforce their army. In the spring of 1385, John organized Cortes, an assembly.
See, Portugal got that advantage, man, being on the coast with nobody to worry about behind them. It could be the English, right? But it seemed like the English and the Portuguese are on decent relations. That would be the only threat, unless, I guess, maybe the Norse people coming from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, maybe they could have been a threat as well. But I don't know. I just think that Portugal, they got the advantage. They got the location advantage, having their border to the Atlantic Ocean and not really having nobody to worry about.
Of the kingdom, which cancelled the will of the deceased king and proclaimed John as the new king of Portugal. Upon hearing the news, the enraged Castilian king immediately decided to finish the job definitively and called all his banners. He gathered around 30,000 men with French heavy cavalry reinforcements of about 2,000.
Okay, so this is basically because the last Portuguese king didn't have any male heirs or heirs, however you say it, and he died. So now all he has is a daughter. He weds his daughter to the king of Castile. And then the half brothers is like, nah, we're not gonna let that happen. And then one of them, this dude, John, gets elected, or Juan would be his Portuguese name, Juan.
Strong. Once again, they headed straight to Lisbon. Yet due to the huge size of their army, the column moved slowly, giving enough time for the Portuguese to react. John had less than 7,000 soldiers at his command and knew that Lisbon most probably would not survive another prolonged siege. Thus, he decided to encounter the Castilians in open battle and moved his force north, beginning preparations on the supposed Castilian march route. The Portuguese occupied a hill bordered by creeks, a solid defensive position chosen by Nuno Alvarez. It was probably their only way to diminish Castilian's huge numerical advantage and maintain any hope of victory. They expected the enemy to attack from the north, so the slope was additionally reinforced with ditches, obstacles, and caltrops. In the late morning of August 14th, the Castilian army arrived on the battlefield. Juan saw the Portuguese entrenchments and decided to go around their positions, as attacking the northern slope was deemed too risky.
Hold on, I gotta see if they really used to like arrange battles, because I know that's been like a trope in movies and stuff like that. Like they would literally meet up. There'd be one side and another side, and then they would fight. I gotta see if they used to actually do it like that.
He decided to attack from the south, where the hill was much easier to charge on. Yet again, due to the size of his army and questionable logistics, troop relocation took the better part of the day. which John effectively used to turn his units around and hastily strengthen the southern approach. The battle started with a charge of French heavy cavalry rushing.
Okay, so I looked it up. It says, while Hollywood often depicts ancient battles as massive, chaotic free-for-alls where armies simply charge at each other, the reality was generally more organized and strategic. Nations did indeed meet up for battles, but these were typically planned and strategic engagements, not just spontaneous brawls. Okay, even still, the fact that they planned their battles, that's still like, oh shit, that's different. Because now we know everything is like we warfare now is just sneaking people, using diversion tactics, decoys, and stuff like that to deter the attention of the enemy one way and then hit them from the other direction. This is warfare now. Pitched battles. A pitched battle was a significant military engagement where both sides deliberately chose the location and time to fight. Generals would carefully consider factors like terrain and army strength before committing to battle. Examples include the Battle of Cannae, where Hannibal outmaneuvered the Romans, and the Battle of Hastings, where William the Conqueror's cavalry played a crucial role. So these were not chaotic melees. Cavalry and archers. While cavalry wasn't typically used for direct charges into formations in the ancient world, they were valuable for scouting and engaging enemy cavalry. Archers and other missile troops could inflict casualties and impact enemy morale, but they were less effective against well-armored and shielded troops than sometimes depicted. Decisive outcomes. Battles were often fought to force a decisive outcome, such as breaking the enemy lines or forcing a rout. Casualties. Most casualties often occurred during the rout when soldiers were fleeing rather than the initial clash. Hold on. This is interesting. This warfare.
To break order in the Portuguese line. But the closer they got, the more disorganized their charge became. A heavy rain of bolts and arrows, combined with uneven terrain crossed with obstacles, virtually mitigated the charge's momentum. This was a poor decision by the King of Castile, as the French knights, being stripped of their biggest advantage, had to then fight at unfavorable odds. Juan tried to fix his mistake and sent the main body of his infantry forward to relieve the French cavalrymen. Seeing the mass of footmen pushing up the hill, John withdrew his ranged units from the flanks and advanced with the rear guard. Regular melee began across the battlefield, with significant casualties on both sides. Yet the Castellan units couldn't use their full potential, as they lost much of their cohesion moving through ditches and pits, just like their French allies half an hour earlier. In comparison, Portuguese troops held the line firmly and dealt serious damage, slowly gaining an upper hand despite the losses on their own side. When the demoralized rear units of the Castellan army saw that the royal banner at the front had fallen, they thought that the king was dead and began fleeing the battlefield. This gradually triggered a massive retreat of Juan's troops, and after barely 2 hours of fighting, the battle ended with a decisive Portuguese victory. John pursued the fleeing enemy and killed many more Castellans. During the night and next day, about 5,000 more Castellans were killed by both royal troops and Portuguese civilians. There's even a story that a humongous baker woman with 6 fingers on each hand killed 8 Castellan soldiers hiding in Aljubarrota with her shovel. Whether it's true or not, it certainly shows how hostile the Portuguese people were towards the Castellan invaders. The encounter near Aljubarrota essentially broke Juan's ability to threaten Portuguese independence and became one of the biggest victories in the history of Portugal. King John subjugated all the remaining opposition in the following months and consolidated his rule, establishing the dynasty of House of Viz and laying the foundations for a future Portuguese empire.
Okay, so I was like half paying attention in that video, but still got some information from it. Probably do a little bit of reading. Going to the book. Going to the book. Conquerors by Roger Crowley. Heavily referred to book, especially on YouTube. So Diogo Chao, 1452, 1486, made 2 voyages along the west coast of Africa in the 1480s. Chao was selected to lead João II, or João, first voyage of exploration in 1482. So we just jumped forward about 110 years or so from the video that we were just watching. So Portugal at this point has been established and surviving and exploring, doing trade with the Africans. So this part, you know what? I'm gonna read these next 2 pages. It's called the India Plan. So Chao, who's Chao? Chao is hold on, let me see. Chao. Who's Chao? Okay, Diogo Chao. Oh, that's just his last name. It says it was Diogo Chao erecting pillars along the west coast of Africa, to whom he had entrusted this task. Then I wrote, Portuguese ambition was fueled by the possibility of finding a route to India, flanking Islam from the rear, and Africa's gold. You know what? I got to go back and read this history right now. It's very interesting. Let's go back a little bit. I'm gonna go back. So, wow. Yeah, this book got it, man. I just want to, it's almost like, damn, I should just go back to the beginning of the damn book. Sheesh. I should go back and read it from the beginning, which I can. I got to get my motor back up for reading. Let me see if I could do it. I think I could do it, man. How many pages is this? I'm about to get my motor right. Y'all about to see this. See, I'm notorious. I used to read like 30 pages in one go. Like just to make a statement, like ain't nobody else doing this. All right, we got 14 pages. I'm about to eat 14 fucking pages. Give me 1 second though. I'm about to eat 14 pages. Maybe. But nah, I think the story is worth it. It's interesting enough to get into it. So we're gonna get into it. Take a quick break. I'll be right back. me go grab the laundry real quick, and then I'll be back.